Tongue. So tongue is a muscular organ. Tongue, it is a muscular organ. So it is which muscle? Smooth or skeletal? It is a skeletal muscle. It is a skeletal muscle located in the oral cavity. Located in the oral cavity. It consists of two surfaces. Number one, dorsal surface. Number one, dorsal surface. And number two, inferior surface. Inferior surface. Next, it consists of two lateral borders and one tip. Two lateral borders and one tip. Okay. Next, tip. Okay. Next, muscles of the tongue. Muscles of the tongue. So there is the presence of two types of muscles. Two types of muscles. Number one, extrinsic muscles of the tongue. Extrinsic muscles. आउटसाइड से आए तो उसको एक्सट्रिंसिक बोलते हैं. Extrinsic muscles of the tongue. Number one, extrinsic muscles of the tongue. Number one, genioglossus. Number one, genioglossus. First muscle, genioglossus. Next, hyoglossus. Second, extrinsic में first muscle. Extrinsic muscle में first muscle genioglossus. Next, hyoglossus. Second muscle. Third muscle is a styloglossus. Next, palatoglossus. See here, this one is a palatoglossus. Okay. These are the extrinsic muscles. Next, intrinsic muscles of the tongue. Intrinsic muscles of the tongue. Intrinsic muscles of the tongue. Number one, superior longitudinal muscle. Superior longitudinal muscle. Next, inferior longitudinal muscle. Transverse muscle and vertical muscle. So these muscles of the intrinsic muscles. Intrinsic means in the tongue. So originates in the tongue and inserted into the tongue only. So that type of muscles we call as intrinsic muscles. Extrinsic muscles means it is originates from the outside then inserted into the tongue, called as extrinsic muscles. Okay, are you getting? Next, surfaces. First we discuss the dorsal surface of the tongue. Dorsal surface of the tongue. Dorsal surface of the tongue subdivides into two parts. Subdivides into two parts by the V-shaped sulcus. By the V-shaped sulcus. By the V-shaped. ఇక్కడ V ఉంది కదా. Okay, the V-shaped sulcus. By the V-shaped sulcus called as sulcus terminalis. Sulcus terminalis. Sulcus terminalis and right. Okay, sulcus terminalis. This sulcus terminalis divides into anterior 2/3 part of the tongue and posterior 1/3 part of the tongue. So divides into anterior 2/3 part, posterior 1/3 part. So first we discuss the anterior 2/3 part of the tongue. Anterior 2/3 part of the tongue. In the anterior 2/3 part of the tongue, there is a presence of papillae. Papillae. There is a presence of papillae. Number one, villate papillae, and then is circumvillate and right. Circumvillate papillae. Circum means round. Circumvillate papillae. Number two, foliate papillae. Foliate papillae. Number three, fungiform papillae. Fungiform papillae. Next, number four, filiform papillae. Filiform papillae present in the center of the tongue. So మనం టేస్ట్ చూడాలనుకోండి, సెంటర్లో ఒక డ్రాప్ వేయండి, మీకేం టేస్ట్ తెలియదు. సెంటర్లో ఎగ్జాక్ట్లీ సెంటర్లో సాల్ట్ తీసుకొని టచ్ చేయండి, నీకు అది సాల్టా స్వీటా తెలియదు. సో అది లిక్విడేట్ టువర్డ్స్ ద లాటరల్ సైడ్, ఇటు కానీ లేకపోతే బ్యాక్ సైడ్ కానీ వెళ్తేనే నీకు టేస్ట్ తెలుసు. ऐसा करे तो टेस्ट मालूम होता. Are you getting? So center lo unte taste telo because there is the absence of taste buds in the center. So whenever there is a presence of this papillae gets the taste buds. So circumvallate papillae, there is a presence of taste bud. Then filiform, fungiform, there is a presence of taste buds, but this filiform there doesn't have. So foliate papillae and fungiform papillae has taste buds, but this one is a filiform papillae that doesn't have any taste buds. Okay, so అందుకని lateral border దగ్గర అదే నువ్వు సాల్ట్ తీసుకొని సెంటర్ లో పెడితే నీకు టేస్ట్ తెలియదు. అదే సాల్ట్ తీసుకొని లాటరల్ బార్డర్ కి టచ్ చేయి, లేకపోతే టిప్ కి టచ్ చేయి, సాల్ట్ తెలుస్తుంది. Because taste buds carries that sensation. Are you getting? Next, posterior 1/3. In the posterior 1/3 there is a presence of lingual tonsils. There is a presence of lingual tonsils. That's why it is a rough area. Tongue anterior side smooth untadi, back side చూసినంత rough untadi because of there is a presence of lingual tonsils. Are you getting? Next, posterior. Next, inferior surface. Come to the inferior surface. Dorsal surface हो गया, inferior surface. The inferior surface, there is a presence of sublingual papillae. Sublingual glands opens here. सो OH अपन क्या कर रहे हैं, सिक्रेशन, सलेवा सिक्रेशन हो रहे, ऐसा थोड़ी देर ऐसा रखे तो पानी आ जाता. So because of that opening only, that the sublingual papillae. Okay, next, frenulum present. Frenulum. There is the presence of frenulum. ऐसा यहाँ पे सॉक का जैसा एक अपेंडेज साइट है, ऐसा पकड़ के खींचे तो आपका ऐसा आता, फ्रेन्यूलम बोलते हैं उसको. सो इंफीरियर सरफेस में क्या रहते हैं, फ्रेन्यूलम. नेक्स्ट, हाँ नेक्स्ट मसल्स हो गए ना, मसल्स. हाँ, नर्व सप्लाई ऑफ द टंग, nerve supply. All muscles of the tongue, right down. Number one, all muscles of the tongue supplied by the hypoglossal nerve. Hypoglossal nerve is the 12th cranial nerve. Okay, 12th cranial nerve supplies the all muscles of the tongue except the one muscle. All muscles of the tongue is supplied by the palatoglossous, except the one muscle, palatoglossous. Thank you. Palatoglossous. Are you getting? Palatoglossous. So palatoglossous is supplied by the 11th cranial nerve. Palatoglossous supplied by the 11th cranial nerve. What is the 11th cranial nerve? Right on, accessory nerve. Next, number three, tongue, special sense by the स्पेशल सेंस बोले तो टंग क्या करते हैं, टेस्ट. सो स्पेशल सेंस क्या है, टेस्ट कैरीज द व्हिच नर्व, कार्डा टिम्पैनी नर्व. కార్డా టింపానీ ఇంతకుముందు తెలుసు కదా, ఫేషియల్ నర్వ్ లో రాసుకున్నాం కదా, ఇట్లా మర్చిపోతుంది, మళ్ళీ మర్చిపోయా అంటే మళ్ళీ నాకు ఇబ్బంది అనిపిస్తుంది, మళ్ళీ చూపించాల్సి వస్తుంది. ఓకేనా, see here the facial canal, ఒకటేమో stapedius nerve, another one is the carda tympani nerve. So this carda tympani passes through the middle ear, then coming out from the pterygotympanic fissure, finally mixed with the lingual nerve, supplies the tongue అనుకున్నాం. Okay, so tongue లో ఏం sensation తీసుకుంటుంది, taste sensation carries the carda tympani nerve. It is a branch of facial nerve. Facial nerve, lingual nerve. It is the branch of facial nerve. Are you getting? Next, sensory by the sensory అంటే టచ్ పెయిన్ టెంపరేచర్. ఇప్పుడు టీ తాగుతున్నాం, టీ తాగినప్పుడు నాకు ఏ సెన్సేషన్ వస్తుంది, హీట్. సో హీట్ ని రిసీవ్ చేసుకునే anterior 2/3 part, right on. Anterior 2/3 part of the tongue, sensory by the lingual nerve. Sensory by the lingual nerve. Lingual nerve is a branch of trigeminal nerve, posterior division. Sensory by the lingual nerve. అంటే anterior 2/3 part లో టచ్ అయినా, పెయిన్ అయినా, టెంపరేచర్ వచ్చినా అది ఎక్కడి నుంచి క్యారీ చేస్తుంది, టు ద lingual nerve. Lingual nerve is a branch of posterior division of mandibular nerve. Posterior division of the mandibular nerve is a branch of V3 branch of the V3 division of the trigeminal nerve. Are you getting? Next. Posterior 1/3 part of the tongue is supplied by the sensory. Same. Posterior 1/3 part of the tongue supplied by the posterior 1/3 supply చేసేది ఏంటి? Lingual branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. చూడలేదా? మళ్ళీ మర్చిపోయారు పిల్లలు. ఒకదానికి కోరిలేషనే ఉండదు. Lingual branch of glossopharyngeal nerve. See here, like this. Tongue supply చేస్తుందా? ఇది posterior కదా. Tongue anterior and this is the tongue posterior 1/3. Posterior 1/3 we have branches are in. So these branches from the student fifth branch. Are you getting? So what is the fifth branch here? Lingual branches. So lingual branch is the branch of glossopharyngeal. Posterior 1/3 part is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. Are you getting? Oh sir, repeat cheyandi. Now supply the tongue. Pakka question 4 marks. 3 stars పెట్టుకుందాం. పక్కా క్వశ్చన్ ఎగ్జామ్ కి పోయేటప్పుడు 100% చూసుకొని వెళ్ళాల్సిన క్వశ్చన్ ఇది. ఓకే, డైరెక్ట్ టంగ్ పడితే 10 మార్క్స్ లక్. టంగ్ పడలేదనుకో నో సప్లై 100% తీద్దాం. ఓకే, ఎన్ని చెప్పండి. నెంబర్ 1 ఫస్ట్ వన్ అయిపోయిందా? ఓకే, ఓకేనా? వన్స్ అగైన్ ఐ రిపీట్. ఒకసారి రిపీట్ చేస్తాను చూడండి. All muscles of the tongue is supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, that is the 12th cranial nerve, except the one muscle that is the palato-glosseus. So palato-glosseus is supplied by the 11th cranial nerve, so axillary nerve. Okay, next special sense by the taste sensation by the cauda tympani nerve, that is the facial nerve branch. Okay, next anterior 2/3 part sensory carried by the lingual nerve. Lingual nerve is a branch of posterior division of the mandibular nerve. Posterior division of mandibular nerve. Mandibular nerve is a division of trigeminal. Mandibular is the trigeminal nerve. Are you getting? Next, posterior 1/3 part of the tongue is supplied by the lingual branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. ఇవన్నీ రాయాలి. టంగ్ నౌ సప్లై 4 మార్క్స్ కడుతుంది. ఓకే, ఆర్ యు రెడీ? నెక్స్ట్, so tongue completed. Come to the nasal cavity. Nasal cavity. Nasal cavity subdivides into 2 cavities. Nasal cavity subdivides into 2 cavities by the nasal septum. By the nasal septum. Okay. Each cavity boundaries. And opposite cavity boundaries. Each cavity there is the presence of medial wall, and lateral wall, lateral wall. Okay, so first medial wall. Medial wall is formed by the medial wall is nothing but septum. Medial wall is nothing but septum. So septum is formed by the perpendicular plate of Ethmoid bone. Perpendicular plate of ethmoid. Perpendicular plate of ethmoid. Another one. Vomer bone. Vomer. Perpendicular plate of ethmoid and vomer bone. See here. This one is a perpendicular plate. Once again. See here. This one is a perpendicular plate of ethmoid. And this one is a vomer bone. Okay, and the cartilaginous part. Right down. Septum is contributed by the two bones and one cartilage called as septal cartilage. Septal cartilage. Nasal septum contributed by the two bones. One is perpendicular plate of ethmoid. Another one is a vomer bone. Another one is a septum. Which septum is as a septal cartilage. That's why it is move. Septal cartilage move होता चुड़ंडी. नासिक septum move हो रही ना ऐसा करे तो move हो रहे. ज़्यादा नहीं करना. वो वहाँ तक क्या होते हैं कट हो जाते हैं. ज़्यादा करे तो टूट जाते हैं. फिर सर्जरी करना पड़ता हो. कभी भी मिल गया बोल के ऐसा lateral side नहीं मारना. lateral side मारे तो वहाँ तक कट हो जाते हैं. वो फिर उसको क्या करना पड़ता? सर्जरी करना पड़ता. Okay, are you getting? Next, lateral wall boundaries. Lateral wall formation and right. Lateral wall formation. See here, lateral wall is formed by the alar cartilages. Alar cartilage and right. Once again, alar cartilage. ALA ala. Alar cartilages are driven. Alar cartilages. ALA ala. Okay. Alar cartilage. Next. Frontal process of the maxilla. Frontal process of the maxilla. Next, lacrimal bone. Lacrimal bone. Maxilla. Frontal process of the maxilla. Lacrimal bone. Lacrimal. Okay. Next, ethmoid bone. Next, ethmoid and ethmoid bone. Next, inferior nasal concha. Inferior nasal concha. Inferior nasal concha. So, superior nasal concha, middle nasal concha is a part of ethmoid. So, అందుకని ethmoid లో రాసేసుకున్నాం అవి. Inferior nasal concha is a separate bone. Next, inferior nasal concha बाद में. Next, medial pterygoid plate. Medial pterygoid plate. Next, perpendicular plate of palatine bone. Perpendicular plate of palatine. Perpendicular plate of palatine bone. So these all parts unite to form a lateral wall of the nasal cavity. Okay, are you getting? Lateral wall of the nasal cavity lo ivanni rayali. Ee parts anni rayali. Okay. Next, find out the roof. Roof is formed by the roof and right. Roof is formed by the cribriform plate of cribriform plate of ethmoid. Once again I show. Cribriform plate of ethmoid. This is cribriform. This cribriform plate of ethmoid. Cribriform plate of ethmoid and sphenoid bone. Sphenoid. Cribriform plate of ethmoid and sphenoid bone. Next, floor is formed by the floor. Floor is formed by the hard palate. Floor is formed by the hard palate. Hard palate. So hard palate and this. Hard palate. Hard palate is contributed by the two bones. Number one, hard palate triangle. Hard palate is formed by the number one, palatine process of the maxilla. Palatine process of the maxilla. And palatine bone. Palatine bone. ఈ రెండు కలిసి హాట్ ప్యాలెట్ ని ఫామ్ చేస్తాయి. ఓకే, దీస్ ఆర్ ద బౌండరీస్ ఆఫ్ ద నాసల్ క్యావిటీ. సో ఈ నాసల్ క్యావిటీలో nasal septum is a 4 marks, otherwise 10 marks. Lateral wall is a 4 marks, otherwise 10 marks. चपलेगा lateral wall 10 marks को पूछ सकते नहीं, और है lateral wall, only boundary से lateral wall और है, septum भी और है, ये boundaries of the nasal cavity है. Okay, now discuss the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. Lateral wall of the nasal cavity. So lateral wall of the nasal cavity is formed by the bones. ఇందాక రాసుకునే రాయాలి. Lateral wall of the nasal cavity is formed by the frontal process of the maxilla. Frontal process of the maxilla. తర్వాత ఏం రాస్తాం? Lacrimal bone. Lacrimal bone. Ethmoid bone, ethmoid bone, inferior nasal canca, inferior nasal canca. Next, perpendicular plate of palatine bone, perpendicular plate of palatine bone, perpendicular plate of palatine bone. Next, medial pterygoid bone, medial pterygoid plate and medial pterygoid plate, medial pterygoid plate. So ఇవన్నీ కలిసి lateral wall ని ఫామ్ చేస్తాయి. Next point, the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. The lateral wall of the nasal cavity, there is a presence of 3 bony shelf-like structures. There is a presence of 3 bony shelf-like structures, bony shelf-like structures called as concas, called as concas. कितना है concas? 3. Sometimes there is a 4. So actually 3. Number 1, superior nasal concha. Number 1, superior nasal concha. Number 2, middle nasal concha. Number 3, inferior nasal concha. Inferior nasal concha. 3 nasal conchas. Next, in between the 2 nasal conchas. Next point, in between the 2 nasal conchas, there is a presence of cubular sulcuses called as meatus. Cubular sulcuses called as meatus. So tubular అంటే structures net, tubular structures అన్నట్టు called as meatus. Number 1 దాంట్లో రాయండి 3 meatus. Number 1, superior meatus. Number 1, superior meatus. Number 2, middle meatus. Number 3, inferior meatus. Okay? Babu, last benches. Disturbance right ఇక్కడ దాకా మెల్ల మాట్లాడుతూ ఓకే ఫస్ట్ వన్ superior meatus. The superior meatus, there is a opening of in the superior meatus, there is a opening of posterior ethmoidal air sinuses. There is a opening of posterior ethmoidal air sinuses. Posterior ethmoidal air sinuses. Next, inkoka point. Posterior 1.25 centimeters to the posterior 1.25 centimeters to the superior nasal concha. Posterior 1.25 centimeters to the superior nasal concha. There is a opening of sphenoidal air sinuses. Sphenoidal air sinuses. This one is opens posterior 1.25 centimeters. Sphenoidal air sinuses. Next, in the middle meatus, there is a presence of elevated structure. There is a presence of elevated structure called as bulla ethmoidalis. Bulla ethmoidalis. So it is an elevated structure. So that is the bulla ethmoidalis. Are you getting? So that is the bone elevated structure present in the middle meatus. Next, beneath the bulla ethmoidalis, there is the presence of see here is like a groove. So that groove we call as semilunar sulcus. There is a presence of semilunar sulcus. Semilunar means sickle shaped. There is a presence of sickle shaped groove. There is a presence of sickle shaped or semilunar shaped groove called as groove. Sulcus anamma. Sulcus anna groove e kada. Okay, there is a presence of sulcus. It is a semilunar shaped called as hiatus semilunaris. Beneath the bulla ethmoidalis, there is a presence of semilunar shaped sulcus or groove called as hiatus semilunaris. Hiatus semilunaris. Is the hiatus semilunaris. This one. Okay. First, the bulla ethmoidalis. In the bulla ethmoidalis, there is an opening of middle ethmoidal air sinuses. Middle ethmoidal air sinuses. Middle ethmoidal air sinuses opens into the bulla ethmoidalis. Next. Anterior part of the anterior part of the hiatus semilunaris. Anterior part of the hiatus semilunaris. There is the opening of frontal air sinuses. There is the opening of frontal air sinuses. Frontal air sinuses. Next. Next, in the hiatus semilunaris. In the hiatus semilunaris, there is a opening of. In the hiatus semilunaris, there is a opening of maxillary air sinuses. ఒక పాయింట్ యాడ్ చేసుకోండి. 1 పాయింట్ maxillary air sinuses. Maxillary air sinuses. In the hiatus semilunaris, there is the opening of maxillary air sinuses. ఇంకొక పాయింట్ యాడ్ చేసుకున్నామా. The anterior end of the sulcus terminal sulcus ఏమన్నాం hiatus semilunaris, frontal air sinuses and ఒక పాయింట్ యాడ్ చేసుకోండి. ఇంతకుముందు రాసుకున్నాం అక్కడ. The anterior end of the hiatus semilunaris, there is the opening of anterior ethmoidal air sinuses. Anterior కూడా అక్కడ ఓపెన్ అవుతాయి. And frontal भी opens there. Okay. Anterior ethmoidal air sinuses. Are you getting? Next, in the inferior meatus, there is the opening of the inferior meatus. There is the opening of nasolacrimal duct. Nasolacrimal duct. చాలా మంది బాగా ఏడ్చేటప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తారు? चीता वाटर ले और प्रयत्न क्या करते पानी यहाँ से आते ना because of this nasolacrimal duct उन्हें ज्यादा रोया या नहीं रोया अपन को मालूम होता है अगर ज्यादा रोए तो क्या होता है पानी यहाँ से आता जब उन्हें बहुत ज्यादा रोया पानी नहीं है थोड़ा बच्चे क्या करते पूरा ऐसे पूरा वाटर करके रोते है ना वाट निजమైన ఏడుగా వాట్ నిజంగా ఏడ్చినట్టు వాటర్ ముక్కు నుంచి రావాలి వచ్చిందంటే అది నిజం అంట ఓకే నెక్స్ట్ next point posterior 1.25 centimeters to the inferior nasal canca. Posterior 1.25 centimeters to the inferior nasal canca. There is a opening of auditory tube opening. Tube opens. Auditory tube opens here. Posterior 1.25 centimeters. This one is the auditory tube opening. Auditory tube. तो उसको क्या बोलते हैं? ईस्टिशनल ट्यूब भी बोलते हैं. ईस्टिशनल ट्यूब और ऑडिटरी ट्यूब. Okay, opens into the posterior 1.25 centimeters to the inferior nasal canca. Are you getting? Next, blood supply. Blood supply of the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. Blood supply of the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. Lateral wall of the nasal cavity subdivides into 4 quadrants. subdivides into four quadrants by the two imaginary lines. By the two imaginary lines. So four quadrants and writing. Number one, quadrants. Number one, anterior-superior quadrant. Anterior-superior quadrant. Next, anterior-inferior quadrant. Next, posterior-superior quadrant and posterior-inferior quadrant. Anterior-superior quadrant, anterior-inferior quadrant, posterior-superior quadrant, posterior-inferior quadrant. Okay. First, anterior-superior quadrant. Anterior-superior quadrant supplied by the రెండు రాసేద్దాం ఇక్కడ నర్వ్ అండ్ ఆర్టరీ రెండు రాసేసారు లేకపోతే మళ్ళీ నర్వ్ మళ్ళీ మొత్తం చెప్తాం supplied by the anterior ethmoidal artery and anterior ethmoidal nerve भी यहाँ पे आ गया okay are you getting next anterior inferior quadrant supplied by the anterior superior quadrant is supplied by the anterior ethmoidal artery and anterior ethmoidal nerve. Okay. Next, anterior inferior quadrant supplied by the alar branch of the facial artery. Alar branch of the facial artery. Alar branch of the facial artery. Next, greater palatine artery. Greater palatine artery. Anterior superior alveolar nerve. Anterior superior alveolar nerve. Alveolar nerve. Next, posterior superior quadrant. Posterior superior quadrant. Posterior superior quadrant supplied by the spinopalatine artery. Spinopalatine artery. Spinopalatine artery. Next, posterior lateral nasal branch of pterygopalatine ganglion. Posterior lateral nasal branch of pterygopalatine ganglion. Posterior lateral nasal branch of pterygopalatine ganglion. Okay, next, posterior inferior quadrant. Posterior inferior quadrant supplied by the greater palatine artery. Greater palatine artery and anterior palatine branch of pterygopalatine ganglion. Anterior palatine branch of pterygopalatine ganglion. Okay, are you getting? So this is lateral wall. Let's apply now supply. Next, nasal septum. 10 marks. Jagrata. ఇంకా చాలా బాగున్నాయి అయినా నేను టకటక 2-3 పాయింట్లు చెప్పి క్లోజ్ చేస్తాను. ఓకే, 10 మార్క్స్ క్వశ్చన్. ఇప్పటికి సగం అయిపోయింది. Nasal septum. Nasal septum formation already రాసుకున్నాం, ఇంకా మళ్ళీ రాపించట్లేదు. Formation లో already clear. Next point. Nasal septum furnished by the nasal septum furnished by the mucous membrane. Nasal septum furnished by the mucous membrane. Okay, next nerve supply formation already rancham. Direct nerve supply and blood supply and nerve supply. बस उतना ही वहाँ पे सेप्टम है खाली सेप्टल का परपेंडिकुलर प्लेट ऑफ वो लिखा है ना, वो यहाँ पे लिखना है पूरा फॉर्मेशन. नासल सेप्टम फॉर्मेशन है ना, वो यहाँ पे लिखना है. उसके बाद में कवर्ड बाय द म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन लिखना है. बस नर्व सप्लाई एंड ब्लड सप्लाई రెండు కలిపి చెప్తున్నాను. ఫస్ట్ నెంబర్ 1 anterior ethmoidal artery and right. First anterior ethmoidal branch of ophthalmic artery. Anterior ethmoidal branch of ophthalmic artery. Number 2. Number 2. Anterior ethmoidal branch of nasociliary nerve. इंदाక artery nerve. Nasociliary nerve. Next. Spinopalatine artery. Next, long spinopalatine nerve, short spinopalatine nerve, greater palatine artery. Next, anterior superior alveolar nerve. Septal ramus of facial artery. Anterior superior alveolar nerve. Tarata septal ramus of facial artery. This all branches and vessels and nerve supplies the this all nerves and vessels supplies the nasal septum. Even facial artery. This all vessels and nerves supplies the nasal septum. Are you getting? So this one is a 10 marks. Tongue is a 10 marks. Okay, 2 10 marks questions are getting. Come on, 3 topics are only. So 3 topics only. Mathematics. I mean, head and neck completed. Are you getting? Only 3 topics. So next క్లాస్ ఒకటే క్లాస్ లో అయిపోతే ఓకే, లేదంటే 2 క్లాసెస్ లో అయిపోతుంది. ఓకేనా? ఎందుకంటే టాపిక్స్ కొంచెం ఎక్కువ ఉంటుంది, లెంతీ ఉంటుంది టాపిక్స్. अगर टाइम मिले तो लेंगे, नहीं तो नहीं. ओके, ओनली 3 to 4 टॉपिक्स है नहीं, खत्म हो जाता. आर यू गेटिंग? आप लोगों को क्या पढ़ना है इसमें? फेशियल राइट फेशियल मसल्स. చదువుకోవాల్సింది ఏంటంటే ఫేషియల్ మజిల్స్ ఒకటి చదవండి. एक बार पढ़ना है फेशियल मसल्स, एक बार पढ़ो. फारिंग्स एक बार पढ़ो. Pharynx. हाँ, 2 topics पढ़ो, बाकी का मैं बोल. Okay, are you getting? अभी मैं फिर ट्यूशन को जाना है, मेरे को 10 बजते हैं, फिर मॉर्निंग से अभी तक कंटिन्यू बोल रहा हूँ.